Uh, Assalamu alaikum and very good evening to all. A warm welcome to all our members joining us across Africa and around the world for today's Afedlife insurance presentation. As many of you know, Afedlife is one of the key initiatives designed to provide financial protection and peace of mind to our members and their families. Today's session is an excellent opportunity to understand the scheme, its benefit, eligibility criteria, claims, and the value it brings to your loved ones. We are honored to have Ms. Hilda Muyirigi, the account relationship manager from Zamara Risk and insurance broker, our trusted partner managing the Afedlife insurance scheme. With her expertise and experience, she will guide us through the details of the program and answer your questions during the interactive session. I encourage everyone to actively participate, take notes, and make full use of this opportunity to gain better understanding of this important benefit available to our community. Without further without further delay, it is my pleasure to invite Ms. Hilda to take us through today's presentation. Ms. Hilda, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Aliraza, and good evening, AFED's community. As you've heard, I'm Hilda Murigi from Zamara. So I'll be taking you through today's session where we'll be looking at what exactly entails being covered under the Afedlife insurance, what are the limits of the benefits, and what to do in case of a claim. And again, being an insurance cover, usually insurance has some exclusions. So I'll again look at what activities or what can lead to a claim not being honored. So on our focus today, I will briefly introduce the Afedlife insurance. Why is it important to have this cover for yourselves and for your dependents? Then the current benefit structure, where we look at the various risks that are covered and up to what limits are covered. Then we will have a look at the claims procedure, what to do in case of a claim and what documentation will be requested at the point of lodging a claim. And then lastly, the general exclusions. So maybe you'll be asking yourself, you may have joined Afedlife insurance, but you've not clearly understood what it entails or what is in it for you once you are covered under the Afedlife insurance. So one of the reasons why, maybe just to touch on what risks are covered under this cover, we have death, we have disability, and also we have critical illness. So why, one would ask, why then do I need this particular cover? So first of all, one of the key reasons why this particular cover is very key is for income protection. Income protection in the sense that in case, God forbid, of an accident and you're completely disabled and maybe you're the breadwinner of your family, what happens to your dependents? So, or in case of death and maybe you're the breadwinner of the family, what then happens to the people that you leave behind? Or in case of a critical illness and maybe you've channeled all your finances towards the treatment, then what happens to the day-to-day needs of your loved ones? So the first point of having, or the first importance of having this cover is to ensure that your income is protected, in the sense, in case of anything, in case of any of those eventualities happening, then your loved ones are covered and your income is also protected, that your people have a starting point, be it because of death or disability or a critical illness, then at least you are you're assured that your income, you have a fallback plan in the sense of a income protection, courtesy of this particular cover. Then we also have peace of mind. There's a peace of mind that comes knowing that in case of any of those listed eventualities, that is disability or death or having a critical illness, then you know that you have a starting point in terms of the monies, maybe if it's to deal with medical expenses, or you're disabled and you're not able to continue earning a living, at least you have a fallback plan, knowing that you somehow have a starting point, even if this will not take you a lifetime. The finances that will come from the benefits will not take you a lifetime, but at least you have something to start you off as you set footing, courtesy of the eventuality that has happened. And also come in, God forbid, in case of death, then again, you also assure that in case you're not there, at least your people or your loved ones, your dependents, have somewhere to, or some money that will start them off in case of such eventualities. Then also medical expenses in case of a critical illness. So one of the benefits or one of the risks covered under this cover is, as highlighted earlier, is the critical illness. And we'll be looking at what critical illnesses in a later slide. So again, when we'll be looking at those critical illnesses, you'll realize that most of them are financially draining, the likes of cancer, the likes of paralysis. So some of these critical illnesses can be so financially draining in the sense that once you've been diagnosed, then much of your income or much of the money that you make is channeled towards the treatment. And that means that the fact that this treatment going on doesn't mean that now your children, maybe who are in school, will stop going to school just because you've been diagnosed with a critical illness. Or maybe you're living in a rented house, doesn't mean that your landlord will still not demand rent just because you're suffering from a critical illness. So again, another importance of having this cover is to ensure that God forbid, in case of diagnosis of a critical illness, then at least you have some supplement to whatever other plan that you may be having in terms, maybe a medical cover. Then also this cover comes in to supplement whatever that you may be having to ensure that you're not stuck financially comes to the treatment of that particular critical illness. Then also maintenance of the day-to-day living needs and sustaining a lifestyle. Again, the eventualities listed, that's diagnosis of a critical illness or being permanently disabled, that you're not able to continue earning a living, or also death, the unfortunate death of a breadwinner of a family. So to ensure that the day-to-day living needs of your family are still maintained regardless of any of those eventualities happening, then that's why also this cover is very key. And lastly, also last rites expenses in case of the unfortunate event, unfortunate events of demise of the principal member of the dependent or a dependent in the family, then at least you have some financial assistance from this particular cover to assist in any expenses that will relate in the last rites of that particular member of the family. So those are majorly main reasons why it's very key to enroll on this particular life cover and to have it, and to ensure that it's well serviced, to ensure that in case of any of those eventualities, then you and your dependents are in a safe space. So to dive into the benefits, currently we are your intermediary, that is our risk and insurance brokers. The underwriter or the insurer in this case is Canon Life Assurance. The cover runs from 1st of January all through up to the 31st of December this year. So when we talk of these benefits, maybe now we just get to dive into the particular details of what's covered or what is payable in case of the eventuality that I've mentioned before. So in case of death or permanent and total disability, we have 5 coverage options within which a member can choose option based on their financial ability or based on their preference. So we have the $10,000 coverage option. You have the $20,000 coverage option. You have $25,000 and have the $50,000, and the highest coverage, we have the $100,000. So what is covered in this particular case is death and permanent disability. So in case of death of a member, under the death benefits, based on the option that the particular member has opted for, then that particular amount will be payable regardless of whether the death was due to an accident or illness or natural causes. So the documents that will be requested at the point, we'll be tackling them in a later slide. And also just to highlight, at the point of a claim, usually also we will remind the contact persons on what documentation. So the fact that we will mention the documentation today does not mean that in case you've forgotten at the point of a claim, you may have a delay or such. So at the point of a claim, usually again, we will still advise on what documentation will be requested, just to ensure that every detail is captured. So in case of death, whether by accident or illness or natural cause, then based on the coverage option that a member has opted for, that amount will be payable to assist in the family, the immediate family. Then also in case of permanent and total disability, in case a member is disabled, permanently disabled, such that they're not able to continue earning a living as they were before, maybe by virtue of an accident, one can have an accident and maybe they have total paralysis courtesy of the accident, they are not able to continue earning a living, or they also suffer an illness that completely renders them permanently disabled. They're not able to continue earning a living anymore, whether they were working or whether they were in business, but now they are, courtesy of the accident or the illness, they're not able to continue working anymore. So again, in case of such an eventuality, based on the coverage option that a member has opted for, then that particular amount, be it 10,000, 20,000, 25,000, 50,000, and $100,000, that will be payable based on what the client, the member opted for, in case of death or permanent and total disability. Just to highlight, the cover is offers worldwide geographical coverage. So as long as you've enrolled as into the Afedlife cover, regardless of where the death or where the disability occurs, whether in your home country or you maybe had traveled work-wise or recreational-wise, regardless of where the death occurs, just to highlight that this cover offers a worldwide geographical coverage. Then also just to highlight, in case of claims arising, that's for death and permanent and total disability, and all documentation is presented. We'll be looking at what documentation in a later slide. And all documentation is presented, then this should not exceed 10 working days of settlement. So within actually 5 to 10 working days, then the benefit should be settled from our end. So this is to highlight that this cover will offer worldwide geographical coverage. So wherever or whenever that eventuality occurs, just know that as long as you enroll to the Afedlife, then you are covered. Another benefit under this cover is the last expense or the last rights benefit. So it's a benefit that usually payable to assist in meeting immediate last rights, any expenses relating to the last rights of a member that passes on. So usually for the principal member, who is the member who has enrolled, then $1,500 will be payable within 5 working days to assist in meeting any immediate expenses relating to the last rights. And for the dependents, that's spouse and a maximum of 4 children, then again, $500 will be payable to assist in meeting the immediate expenses relating to the last rights. Again, also at the later slides, we'll be looking at what documentation will be requested at the point of such a claim. Then another benefit under this cover is what we refer to as the critical illness benefit, and we've highlighted it as a standalone benefit because in case one is diagnosed with a critical illness now, and then the claim under this benefit, and then God forbid death occurs courtesy of the same critical illness, then the fact that there was an amount paid at the point of illness diagnosis will not affect the final death benefit, which is the 10, 20, 25,000, 50,000, or 100,000 amount payable for death. So the fact that we mention it as standalone means that if it's paid at the point of diagnosis and then God forbid death occurs, then it will not affect the main benefit. So there will be 2 benefits payable in case of such an incident. So just to highlight, this benefit kicks in only if the diagnosis is done for the first time. So that is to mean that the fact that maybe you've now realized that there's a benefit that can cover the critical illnesses now, and maybe you've had a pre-existing condition Kindly note that this benefit kicks in if the diagnosis is done for the first time. And usually the benefit is payable. The benefit payable is 30% of the death benefit, but limited to a maximum amount. So just to highlight, for the members who are under the $10,000 category, then in case of diagnosis of a critical illness, $3,000 will be payable at the point of diagnosis. For members under the 20,000 category or the 20,000 option, then $6,000 will be payable in case a member is diagnosed with a critical illness. For the members under the 25,000 category, then $7,500 will be payable at the point of diagnosis with a critical illness. For members under the 50,000 category, $10,000 will be payable, and also the same for the members under the 100,000 category. And just to highlight, this benefit is usually payable as a lump sum amount. So someone may ask, now that you have this benefit, does it mean that you just walk into a hospital and say that you have the Afedlife and they will settle your bill? Unfortunately, this does not work the same way as a medical cover. However, this amount will be wired directly to you as a member. So as mentioned before, at times you may be diagnosed with a critical illness, but at that point, maybe you have a medical cover that is sufficient to cater for the medical expenses. However, you may be having also other bills that need to be attended to, the fact that you're treating this critical illness. So you may realize maybe as a family, you've channeled all your finances towards the treatment, and now you have other bills that also require money. So again, it is not cast on stone that the amount payable under this benefit will be paid directly to the hospital. This money will be paid to you as the member, and then now you're able to manage it, be it paying the bills or be it paying the medical expenses. So this is usually just to supplement whatever plan you may be having in place in regards to the treatment, and to ensure that you're not stuck financially in case you are diagnosed with a critical illness. So we dive into what critical illnesses do we refer to when we talk about this. So the first critical illness is cancer. So in case a member of the AFEDS community is diagnosed with whatever type of cancer, kindly note that you can benefit from this particular cover. So in case of any diagnosis, once it's established that it's cancer, kindly reach out to the Central Health Board, and then we will be assisted to ensure that you get a benefit under this particular, you're able to get some assistance under this particular benefit. Then another illness that's covered under this is paraplegia. Paraplegia is what we refer to in layman's language as paralysis. So in case a member is permanently or totally paralyzed, either both upper limbs or both lower limbs, then they are able to, whether by virtue of accident or by virtue of illness, then this particular member is supposed to reach out to the Central Health Board, and they're able to get some financial assistance courtesy of this particular benefits. Then also we have major organ transplant. In this case, we have particular organs that are covered. So in case a member is unwell and there's a recommendation by the doctor to have an organ transplant, the organs in this case, we have the heart, the liver, lung, kidney, eye, pancreas, and bone marrow. So if a member is unwell and the doctor recommends that they have to undergo any of those transplants, and this case they ought to be the recipients, not the donor, then this particular member can get some financial assistance of this particular benefit. So any other organs that are not listed from the ones that I've mentioned are considered as exclusion. So it's the heart, liver, lung, kidney, eye, pancreas, and bone marrow. So any of those transplants are considered for benefit under this critical illness benefit. Then we also have stroke. Stroke usually it's damage of the brain. At times it may be due to an illness, or it may be caused also by an accident. So in case a member suffers stroke, then kindly note that they are able to benefit from this particular benefit. Then we also have multiple sclerosis disease. This is usually an autoimmune disease that damages the um, protective layer that covers the nerve fibers. So usually disrupts communication from the brain to the body, such that you find maybe one is not able to function normally. They are not able to walk. They are not able to eat, use their limbs as it should be, because that protective layer of the nervous system has been destroyed. So, in case of diagnosis of this particular autoimmune disease, kindly note that a member can still claim under this critical illness benefit. Then we also have the Parkinson's disease. Usually, it's characterized by rigidity of muscles and also rhythmic tremors. You find someone is their limbs are rigid, and also they have tremors that they do not have control over of their body. So that's what's majorly Parkinson's disease. So it's commonly for people in the old age. Normally, it's considered it's considered that it attacks mainly people in the old age. However, if this particular disease comes before one attains the age of 60, then they can claim under this particular benefit. Then we also have the coronary bypass surgery, or what we refer to in layman's language as open heart surgery. So any surgery relating to the heart, then kindly note that a member can have a benefit, a financial benefit from this particular benefit, the critical illness benefit. However, any non-surgical procedures to the heart then are not considered, but any surgical procedures to the heart, then they can claim under this particular benefit. Then we also have renal failure or kidney failure. So in case a member suffers kidney issues and they are recommended to undergo dialysis, then kindly note that they can they can get some financial assistance courtesy of this particular benefit. However, if it's only one kidney that has failed, usually medically it's considered that man can live on only one kidney. However, there are people who are born with one kidney, or along their lives, they've maybe donated one kidney to their loved ones. So, in case of such an eventuality, then you only have one kidney existing, and that particular one kidney fails, then kindly note that that's considered also as renal failure. Then we also have heart attack. In case a member is diagnosed with a heart attack, and mostly most people think that once you've been diagnosed with a heart attack, then it automatically leads to death. So usually one can suffer a heart attack and still survive. So again, in case one is diagnosed with a heart attack, then they can also claim under this benefit. We also have blindness in case of permanent and irreversible loss of sight of both eyes. Then that means that particular member can seek compensation under this particular benefit in terms of the critical illness expenses and all. Then also we have Alzheimer's disease. Usually, mostly this affects the very elderly. So it's usually brain disorder that gradually one loses their memory and thinking skills. So again, in case of a diagnosis of the Alzheimer's disease before the age of 60, kindly note that a member can benefit from this particular benefit. So majorly, those are the main critical illnesses covered under this particular Afedlife insurance cover. So to dive onto the eligibility, who are the members eligible to enroll to this particular cover? So all Afed members between the age of 18 to 75 are eligible to enroll to this particular cover. So again, based on the category that a particular member chooses to have coverage on, as mentioned before, we have the 10,000 category, 20,000 category, 25,000 category, 50,000 category, and the 100,000 category. Then in case of a member seeking to enroll, again, based also on your age and based on the category that you choose, usually there's a premium breakdown. So once you want to enroll, then you're able to reach out to the Central Health Board's team, and they're able to advise based on the category that you want to enroll. They will advise on the premium that you are eligible to pay for that particular category. So we dive into the claims, what to do or what to expect in case of a claim. So the first point of contact in case of a claim, the first point of contact is the AFED team or the Central Health Board team. So in case of any claim, the first point of contact is reports, whatever incident, be it diagnosis of a critical illness or be it a death of a member or of a dependent of a member, or in case of a disability diagnosis and you're rendered disabled, completely disabled, that you're not able to continue working. So your first point of contact is the Central Health Board team. Then they will report the incident to us as Amara, and we will advise on what relevant documentation will be requested for that particular claim, depending on the particular claim. So your first point of contact is the Central Health Board's team. So what documentation will be requested? This is just to have you have this information at the back of your minds. However, as mentioned earlier, at the point of reporting the claim to us, we will still advise on the documentation. So you don't have to put it fully at the back of your minds, or you don't have to memorize this particular documentation, because at the point of reporting a claim, we will still get back and advise on what additional documents will be requested. But just to highlight so that you have it at the back of your mind. So in case of a last expense claim, be it of a member or dependents, that's your spouse and children, then the first documentation that will be requested is a certified burial permit. Then also bank details. Usually we advocate to make all payments through the AFED's bank accounts, and then they're able to cascade the same down to the particular member. So usually we will request for the bank details for AFED, and then also a copy of ID or passport of the claimant and of the deceased. So at the point of claiming against the last expense, we will request for a copy of ID of the deceased and also the person who is lodging the claim. Then also now we dive to the disability and critical illness. So in case of diagnosis of a critical illness, or in case a member is by virtue of an accident or an illness, they're rendered permanently disabled, then at the point of a claim, we will request for a copy of the identification document or passport. Then also the original medical reports. These medical reports now, in case of a disability, they're able to clearly outline that this particular member is disabled and they're not able to continue working. So based on the report will clearly outline. Or also in case of a critical illness, the medical report will clearly outline what critical illness is the particular member suffering from, and what level, or is it on a first-time diagnosis, is it a pre-existing condition. So the particular medical report will give the actual details of the particular disability or the critical illness. Then we also have a claim form that now comes from us. Once the claim has been reported to us, usually we will advise on any further documentation that will be requested, and we will also issue a claim form that will be filled in that will be filled in to highlight the details of the particular claim. And also the discharge voucher will need to be filled in. So usually the discharge voucher will be filled in by the Central Health Boards. So the discharge voucher is usually a document that comes from the insurer showing the breakdown of what amount they are paying for that particular claim. So usually it's just to show the breakdown of the amount that they are paying against that particular claim. And finally, the bank details. Again, as mentioned earlier, usually we advocate to have all payments channeled through the AFED main account to ensure that there is accountability, and also to ensure that the rightful beneficiaries are able to gain. Then lastly, on death. So in case of death of a member of AFED, usually The last expense, just to highlight, the last expense is usually the quick one to settle because it will not require the original death certificate, a copy of the original death certificate. So the burial permit is usually sufficient to settle a last expense benefit. But now for the death benefit, which is the huge amount, usually a copy of the death certificate will be requested. That's usually the death benefit may take a while longer than the last expense. So usually a copy of the death certificate will be requested. Then also a copy of the ID of the claimant and ID or passport, that's identification document of the claimant and of the deceased, will be requested. And then a police abstract in case the death was accidental or the death was due to unclear circumstances. Usually such deaths will involve the police. So in case of such, then that may be requested in case it was accidental. Then also the claim form, again, this will emanate from us. Once the claim has been reported to us as Amara, we will revert back with the claim form that needs to be filled in for this particular claim. And then a discharge voucher, again, the discharge voucher comes from the insurance company. Once all the claims documentation have been presented, then they will revert back with a breakdown of what's payable under that particular benefit. And then lastly, the bank details. Again, the bank, as you note, the bank details appear in all the claims. So those is just to highlight on what key documentation will be requested at the point of the claim. So in case of any further documentation, usually again, we advise accordingly and on time. Then lastly, we have the exclusion. So usually for all insurance policies, usually there's some activities or there's some things that once done may cause an insurer or an insurance company not to honor a claim. So in this particular case, we'll be highlighting on what are the general exclusions of a life insurance. So the first exclusion is hazardous sports. So hazardous sports are those sports where, if, for instance, you're to get involved in a sport and the organizer or the organizing company or the owner of that particular sport, for instance, it's a fiery rally, and you're to get involved in such, and you're asked to sign off some forms to indemnify the organizer, kindly note that if you have to sign any indemnification documents before you take part in any sport, that is to mean that you're already taking part in an hazardous sport. That's usually the signing of the document is to say that usually most documents will say this is to mean that in case of any injury occurring, I do not hold the organizer liable. So in case you find yourself participating in such a sport, kindly note that that is already an hazardous sport and you're getting into a risk while knowing. So in case of a claim arising from such, insurers will not honor claims from hazardous sports. Then any existing condition, here comes now the critical illness, where I mentioned that the critical illness benefits majorly focuses if the diagnosis is on a first-time basis. So if, for instance, you have a pre-existing condition now, and then now you realize it's a claim, that it's a benefit that you can benefit from, kindly know that you cannot claim against pre-existing conditions. So this is just to highlight that critical illness is on a first-time diagnosis only. Then we also have another event that can cause a claim not to be honored is drugs not prescribed by a registered medical practitioner. So in case one does over-the-counter medication or maybe takes some herbal concoction that causes harm or causes death, then kindly note that an insurer, if it's established that it was due to drugs not prescribed by a registered medical practitioner, then the insurer will not honor that particular claim. Then you also have intentional self-injury or attempted suicide. In the case, maybe one gets to learn that if I, for instance, throw myself off a building and there's a financial aspect to it, then in case of any claim occurring due to such an incident, so basically intentional self-injury for financial gain, Then if it's established that it was for financial gain, then an insurer will not honor such a claim. Then we also have active participation in riots, strikes, and civil commotion. If it's established that you are actively participating, that you are on the front line, you're the organizer of a riot, a strike, a civil commotion, then an insurer will not honor that particular claim. However, if it's passive, in the sense that maybe there's a riot where you are and you're driving in your car and people who are rioting throw stones at your car and you're injured in the process, then in such a case, you are passively participating. You're not actively participating, and that will be honored. However, if it's active and it's clearly established that you are actively participating, then the insurer will not honor such a claim. Then lastly, active participation in terrorism is not covered. So if it's established that a member suffered an injury or a member died while they were actively participating in a terrorism attack or a terrorism activity, then that claim will not be honored. However, if a member is caught up in a terrorism activity in passive mode, maybe you're in a mall and there's a terror attack in that particular mall, and there's injury or there's death occurring from such an activity, then in that case that will be honored since the particular member was passively in that particular mall. But if it's established that that member was actively participating or was part and parcel of that terror activity, then that particular claim will not be honored. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. We will dive to the Q&A session. Mr. Liraza, any insight or any point you'd like to pass on before we dive to the Q&A session?
So thank you very much, Hilda, for the informative and insightful presentation. I'm sure our members now have much better understanding of Afedlife insurance, its benefit, and how it can actually help provide the financial security for themselves and their families. As expected, we have received several questions from the members from the platform, and few of them they have also texted me privately. And thank you all who took the time to participate and submit your questions. We'll now move on to question and answer session, which is often the most valuable part of this discussion. Ms. Hilda, with your permission, I'll bring forward the question one by one on behalf of our members. And I'll start with the first one. So I'm taking from the platform that we have received. You have actually just answered. One question was about exclusion that you just explained very well. The second one, someone is asking, although it will be prudent if you answer rather than me answering that. It says, is ear surgery covered?
Unfortunately, ear surgery is not part of the critical illnesses covered. So ear surgery is not covered.
Great, thank you. So the second question, which I'm getting that we have received this question, it says, so during the death benefit of the children, which you explain in your presentation that it gives till up to $500 per child, up to 4 childs. What is the age limit and what are the criteria? Do they need to be studying or something like that? I guess that's one of the important part we need to clarify to our members.
Sorry, the age limit of the dependents?
Yes, for the last funeral expense for the
Okay.
dependent, for the children, what is the age limit of the claim, and also what are the criteria if a boy is studying, not studying? I guess it's very important that we clarify to our members.
Okay. So on the dependents, as mentioned, for the members, it's clear it's 18 to 75 years. For the dependents, that's the children and the wife. So for the spouse, they're covered from, again, from 18 to 75. For the children, they're covered from birth up to the age of 25. However, for any children between 21 to 25, proof of schooling or proof of parental support will be requested at the point of a claim. However, for children with special needs, they are not. We do not have an age limit for their coverage. So, children who with special needs, we do not have the age limit. I hope that's clear.
Yes. So the second question from the platform that I see, it says, please clarify about pre-existing conditions for new members. Any declaration to be done or medical checkups? Also about discovery period if any members entering scheme with pre-existing coverage.
Okay, so just to answer this, I hope I get it right. I hope I've gotten the question right. Is pre-existing condition. So, for instance, if a member, for instance, the critical illnesses you mentioned, the likes of cancer, is, for instance, a member already has cancer and joins the scheme now. Remember, usually there's a waiting period of 3 months across for any new members joining the scheme. So in case of a pre-existing condition, and it's actually, again, one of the reasons why the medical report is usually very key is because it will establish whether it's a pre-existing condition or it's on a first-time diagnosis at the point of a claim. But usually it's prudent that if a member has a pre-existing condition as such of the diseases mentioned on the critical illnesses, they pre-declare at the point of joining, just to ensure that they if they were to lodge a claim and it's declined, they do not feel that they've been victimized. So it's just to be clear that if a member has a pre-existing condition of the illnesses listed mentioned earlier, then usually new members will have a waiting period of 3 months, and then in case now they want to lodge a claim on the same and the medical report shows it's pre-existing, then that will not be honored. I hope I answered your question right.
Yes, Hilda. So just a supplement question on this question that we received.
Yes.
So what is the discovery period if any of member entering scheme with, so basically let's assume just with an example, do
Mhm.
we have any expiry? Let's assume a person had any existing condition and he comes to figure it out when he enrolled after the waiting period, and that's the time he gets to that understanding that he had this critical illness. Will it be honored?
If the report, remember the report will outline if they had the pre-existing condition and it was not known to them that they have the condition, then they enroll, there is expiry of the waiting period, and upon the expiry, they are able to, they maybe go to a hospital and well, and it's established at that point that this person has a critical illness, only that it was existing but they didn't know the diagnosis has been done while they're already on the cover, then in that case it will be covered. But if they already knew that they had that condition and the reports show that that was diagnosed maybe a year back, and now the person wants to claim once they've enrolled, then that will not be honored. But if the discovery has happened, say for instance, one may be having, for example, one may be having cancer, but unfortunately, they do not know that they suffer the disease. They join the cover, and then maybe 4 months down the line, they visit a hospital, and now it's established that they have cancer. Then, in that case, it will be covered because they didn't know that they had cancer, in as much as it was already in their systems. I hope that's clearer.
Yes. So we get this. You have clarified that point. Just I guess one question is directed to me, and it is asking about the scheme, if it is effective. So, just for the sake of members, that this scheme was started in year 2024. Currently, it is the third year, and we have, as my colleague from Zamara Risks Ms. Hilda explained, we have 5 categories. So I just want to give you to tell you that why is it worth or why it is not worth. I'll just tell you the statistical part and just say few points. So in the first year during the inception, we had members who were insured to 18.9 million, and then we had 33 million, 33.3 million, I believe, and currently we are closely to $38 million. Uh, and the scheme has been growing. It has been going tremendously, and as I speak, we have received around 3 claims. One was a critical that Zamara actually provided us after the depositing of relevant and necessary documents. The second was a death claim, so we received the funeral expense. And the final, I guess, it's under the process, that is the death benefit. So when someone asks me if it is worth, yes, there is nothing that we can compare to the life of a person. But as explained that when a person goes, or a breadwinner, he goes away from the family, at least there is kind of security to pay the rents, the school fees of the kids. At least these normal things are not disturbed. So, Hilda, I've received another question here, and let me just read out, because there is a flow of uh, questions coming on my personal phone. So I'm just trying to. So I'm just reading out. I believe it just they need to understand. I guess this is a annual based insurance and term. That's what I could feel. So the question is, depending on your age, health, and your lifespan, the cutoff time for joining the insurance scheme is 75 years. What is not clear to me is if a person joins at the age of 72 and survives up to 75, will the insurance company continue to cover above 75 years old insurance in the same scheme, or make changes in the scheme? I believe probably the members would want to have the clarity between the term and annual base, if you can explain on that part.
All right. So when you mentioned on the eligibility, that's 18 to 75. This is to mean that a member will be covered at the point that they are 75 years. So after 75 years, unfortunately, they cannot now be covered under the scheme unless now a member takes up a cover on a personal basis. But collectively, as the AFED's scheme, because it's considered as a group scheme, usually they will cover if a member, the instance that was issued, a member joins at 72 and they survive to 75, so that particular member will enjoy being under the AFED scheme up to when they are 75. So after 75, now what we recommend that a member can now enroll on a personal basis on an individual cover, but under the scheme it's up to 75 years.
Great. So the second question I received from one of our members, it says, once a person claims a critical illness, example in year 2026, can he continue being covered in the next insurance year?
Yes. So again, once once a member claims under the critical illness in 2026, that does not stop them from seeking coverage the following year. What happens is, the following year, for instance, if they've had a benefit or they've had a claim against, say, for instance, cancer, the next year they can still enroll. The only difference will be if, for instance, a critical any other critical illness will still be covered, only that now in the next year cancer cannot be paid again because first time diagnosis was in 2026. But that does not mean that that particular member is not eligible for cover in the following year. They can still be covered, just that now cancer will not be covered next year, but any other critical illness will still be covered.
Thanks. So from the platform, we have one more question that comes. I guess probably they require some clarity. It
Okay.
says, "What type of medical certificate do you want for new member?" So I believe we don't have any medical check for all our members, but
Yes.
probably they might be asking about the medical for the critical illness. I guess that's my interpretation, but you can answer.
Okay. So usually, when on upon enrollment, we do not request for any medical certificate from the member. So we usually there's a principle of insurance that says utmost good faith. So it's usually upon the member to disclose any condition at their will. You're not coerced to disclose your health details, but at your will, if you feel there is a need for the insurer to know a pre-existing condition, that can be done on an individual basis. But to clarify, we do not request for any medical certificate at the point of enrollment.
The second question, what happens during the epidemic or pandemic? Just consider currently, I see WHO DG had mentioned about Ebola and describing a critical situation. So let's assume, and we have also seen during COVID-19 era. I mean, what happens when some disease that are classified in those categories and we receive some death notification? I mean, how would you consider it? Would you be paying it, or there are some exclusions on that also?
Thank you. So actually, currently, like for COVID, over time, for starters, most insurers, actually all insurers, do not consider pandemics for coverage. However, over time, we saw COVID being covered, and it's currently considered for coverage. Now, Ebola, again, we see there's been a rise in the cases of Ebola. So currently, they are actually, since coverage by insurance companies is usually informed by reinsurers, who are the insurance companies of insurance. So currently, there are talks in the works for reinsurers to accept insurance companies to take up risk on the Ebola pandemic, because no one saw it coming that Ebola will be a pandemic in the current tense. Just the same way we saw COVID, and then suddenly it was a pandemic. So currently, pandemics are not covered. However, with the current evolution in the actually in our continent in particular, we are having discussions going around the insurance stakeholders to have the reinsurers accept Ebola to be covered. But currently, as it is, as advised currently, pandemics are not covered by insurance companies.
So pandemic are also part of exclusions.
Yes,
Okay.
as
So
it is, but that is subject, like you see, the exclusions that I mentioned, they're already there, they've been existing. But now, pandemics have been, but you see, with the evolution in the health sector, we might see them do away with that as an exclusion and consider coverage. But for now, it is an exclusion. But COVID is covered.
so we see decrease in COVID, and that's covered, and an increase in Ebola, it's not covered. Okay.
It's because I think Ebola is has not. It's very recent, and they didn't see it coming. So that's why we are having. Actually, there was a stakeholders workshop last week by the reinsurers, and one of the key items that's on the table is coverage of Ebola. So I think we will see the same development, the same way they initially could not take up COVID, but now eventually they had to take up COVID cases. So I think we are, as stakeholders also, we are pushing for the same, because actually it's cutting across so many clients asking about Ebola.
Great. So I've received one question, and I believe that is directly for you. It says, "Greetings." The lady says, said after the age of 75 one can enroll on private basis. Can she throw some light? One, up to what age can they cover behind 75? And are the premiums very high? I believe he is referring to the above the cutoff date of 75, that if you had mentioned that on a private base they can be enrolled above 75, and are the premiums high? That's the question.
Okay. So just to shed some light on that, after 75, mostly common practice is um an individual, most what we've seen in most insurers, they will cover up to the age of 80, but now the premiums are exorbitantly high because again for insurance it's considered the older. Unfortunately, insurance considers the older the riskier. So someone who's 30 and someone who's 75 will not pay equivalent premiums for the same amount of coverage. So yes, I concur the premiums are very high above the age of 75. However, most insurers will have a complete cutoff at 80. I hope I answered right.
Yes,
Okay.
so it is possible, and privately, yes, the insurance are high, and I believe in the market they might be till 80 or above also 80. I pray there might be some more. So some questions are coming. Most of them they've been answered within your presentation. So just for the sake of members, I'll specifically speak for Tanzania. Definitely from the experience that we have received for the few unfortunate deaths. So the moment we have been notified about the death, I'll just for the benefit of the member, we usually notify the broker that this member had passed away on so and so date. We actually also submit their application form, and also the FED's life certificate, and also show them the evidence of the burial proceedings that we have, just to show that this thing actually happened. And later on, we also need to, for Tanzania, I understand, for us to bury any of our loved ones, friends, family, we actually require to have the burial permit. That's before, prior to the proceedings of the burial. So we actually submit that, and on that basis, Zamara actually presents our case, and actually we get the funeral. The last funeral expense within the stipulated time frame, and we have certain SLAs also. Yes, at times it goes up and down because of the documentation. But when it comes to the death benefit, it actually takes some time on the basis until the certificate is out, and that's how the process. So just for that reason. So from the platform, I don't see any kind of comment, but I've been receiving, and I guess mostly we have answered, and probably we can document this. We can have a frequent FAQ, and we can actually circulate for the benefit of our members. Also, for the members, we would like to tell you that the certificates have been dispatched to your respective Jamaat, and it is very important that you collect it, check it, your passport numbers, your date, birth dates, and the spelling that it actually appears as how it is in your passport, because these are the requirements that we need to submit to the broker for the processes of in an unfortunate event. Based on that, I see most of them have been actually answered during the presentation. And if we receive any question, we'll definitely send it to you. And Hilda, I know we have kept you waiting in the office till late evening just for
No,
this
it's okay.
session.
It's okay.
Uh, but you have been actually a support, and we actually managed to do this thing. And to have my concluding remarks, I would definitely thank you for the time, your expertise, and for the patiently addressing all the questions from our members. And on behalf of our Central Health Board and all the participants, we sincerely appreciate the valuable insight that you have shared with us. And we hope today's session has helped our members better understand the benefit of FED Life Insurance Scheme and the importance of planning the future. To all our members who joined us live, thank you for your participation, your questions, and your continued support. An informed member is an empowered member. That's what I believe, and we encourage everyone to take advantage of this opportunity and benefit available through FED Life. With that, we come to an end of today's session. We look forward to see you again in future engagements, and I'm sure we'll have a second engagement probably, if inshallah, with Miss Hilda on when she presents the report on the performance of the scheme on the second quarter. Until then, stay informed, stay protected, and take care of yourself and your loved ones. Thank you very much, Hilda. Wassalamun alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for the interaction. Thank you.
Thank you so much.